Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining our webinar today discussing Snapshot Live. Very exciting introduction into the company. So I think we should start with some introductions. So I am Cameron Ainscough, project manager at CrowdGuard. I've been involved in the installation of HVM for several years. A couple of weeks ago, I completed my counterterrorism protective and preparedness course, which is recognised by the NPSA. I've also completed my level 3 crowd management course at the end of last year. So coming into CrowdGuard, it's really clear that there's a want and a will to ensure the due diligence in the supply chain and how imperative it is that tested products are installed in rated configurations. Seeing this and always being interested in advancing and innovation, bringing Snapshot Live into the company has been a really exciting project to work on. So I'm really excited to show it to you all today. So I'm joined by Roger Poeth and James Jarrett from Snapshot Live. And I guess we'll get straight into it. So, assurance that you can evidence. How can you strengthen HVM quality assurance and due diligence? CrowdGuard works closely with clubs, stadia, event organisers, local authority, safety teams, all across the UK to support practical hostile vehicle mitigation. But today's session is focused on a proportionate layered approach to HVM. Specifically, how Snapshot Live can support assurance, due diligence, and confidence during our temporary deployments. So the key point I want to make from the offset is that HVM is not about creating excessive or intrusive security. It's about understanding risk, matching measures to the operational requirement, supporting safe and welcoming venues. At CrowdGuard, we describe that as our plan, provide, protect approach. So HVM is more than just barriers. Hostile vehicle mitigation is often misunderstood as simply putting barriers in place. However, in reality, that is only one part of the picture. HVM is a protective security discipline that looks at how vehicle-borne risk can be reduced through a combination of processes, procedures, and physical measures. That includes things like planning, communication, incident response, traffic management, self-awareness, and then, when appropriate, vehicle security barriers. The important word here is proportionate. Vehicle security barriers are important, but they are not a complete solution on their own. Their role is primarily to create a delay, giving people, stewards, safety teams, and emergency responders the time and space to react. So I'd like to touch on the assurance gap in HVM. The challenge with the assurance gap in HVM is installations can be correct at handover, but they do change over time. People quite rightly focus on the planning and deployment stage. We assess a risk, agree on the operational requirements, select the right measure, deploy it on site, and hand it over. And at that point, everyone may be satisfied that the installation is correct. But the challenge is that with temporary HVM deployments, it's not static just because it's been signed off. In live environments, things change. Layouts move, vehicle access needs change due to authorized deliveries, or even emergency access requirements. But when things change, how do we know that everything has been put back in the correct place? This is where assurance becomes hugely important. We need to think about whether assets could be interfered with, moved, tampered with during the operational period. It may not always be malicious, but someone could be trying to make space, improve access, or solve a local problem without truly understanding the wider protective safety implications. And this is why HVM should not be treated as a one-time installation exercise. It should be part of a wider protective security plan with clear arrangements and monitoring, checking, reporting, and review. And at CrowdGuard, this links directly into our plan, provide, protect model. We plan by understanding the threat, vulnerability, and operational requirements, and the agreed layout configured to the latest industry standards. We provide by deploying suitable, rated, and proportionate measures in the agreed configuration. But we also need to protect throughout the life of the deployment, not just the handover. This means maintaining the confidence that the asset remains present, aligned, and functioning as intended. And this is where tools like Snapshot Live can help close that assurance gap. It's not about surveillance, and it does not replace the competent people on site. It's built to assist people, not to replace them. Good HVM is not just about placing equipment. It's about maintaining a defensible, proportionate, and auditable protective security position from planning through to deployment and into live operations, and then finally into review. The assurance gap appears when we assume that what was correct at handover will remain correct throughout the live operations, which doesn't always happen. And this ideology leads us on to Snapshot Live, where I'll pass you over to Roger.
Thanks, Cameron. Good afternoon, everyone. So what I'd like to do today is continue and explain why Snapshot Live exists, what problem we set out to solve, and then specifically how we've worked with the CrowdGuard team to evolve this into something that's suitable for HVM deployments. Because when people first hear camera technology, they often assume that we're just another CCTV solution, and we're actually not. We're very different to that. So the problem that we originally set out to solve is actually very simple. It's solving operational blind spots. So across infrastructure, construction, utilities, and public spaces, there are countless locations where people need visibility, but conventional monitoring simply doesn't make sense everywhere. And that could be because there's no power or broadband or even permanent infrastructure. And maybe even, deploying. And what Cameron even alluded to earlier, privacy concerns may continue surveillance disproportionate. Yet despite all of that, there's still an operational need across a wide range of applications where people still need to know, is everything where it should be? Is it all okay? Has something changed? Do I need to act? And that gap between visibility and having no practical way of achieving it, that's where Snapshot Live sits. And that's what we've targeted as a problem to solve. So if you look at it, most traditional solutions, they sit at two extremes. At one end, you've got manual inspection or manual site visits or people being there. Somebody is there, that costs time, money, it introduces delays. And critically, it only tells you what's happening at that exact moment that you're in that location. And when you're not there, obviously visibility disappears. At the other extreme, you've got full-blown CCTV, where you are continuously streaming video. You might use a control room. That's got a high bandwidth requirement. Power is required. You've got storage of a lot of data. And then again, the privacy issue there of keeping, compliant with GDPR. And in many cases, that is overkill. Because in reality, many organizations, they don't need 24/7 surveillance. They just, they're not interested in watching hours of footage. What they need is clear, timely evidence of conditions at key moments that are important to them. And that's where our thinking was different. So please, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. So our main principle and question to ourselves was, what if images are enough? So not video, no continuous surveillance, just scheduled or on-demand imagery. Now that really changes everything, because when you move from video to still imagery, the bandwidth requirements, they collapse, power requirements go down significantly, deployment becomes a lot simpler, and privacy concerns also reduce massively. And that means that a lot of locations that were previously deemed to be not viable, they become viable. And our systems, for that reason, they are, I will show you in a minute on another slide, they're solar powered, cellular connected, and rapidly deployable. So basically, there's no fixed infrastructure required. And also on the slide, it says privacy, and that's been bolted into what we do from the start because it's not surveillance. And the distinction is really quite important because with using still images, we are not continuously watching people and not generating a lot of data archives. We're capturing, defined still images that are timestamped for operational assurance. And that's a very different use case. And it's more proportionate, for focused and evidence-led. And in this day and age, when everybody expects privacy to be right at the top of our priority list, that is important. Now, of course, images on themselves, they are very, very useful. But if you combine this with AI, and as if you go to the next slide, it becomes even more powerful because what we can do is we can compare, analyze, detect changes, and flag anomalies. So instead of somebody checking an image manually, the system can help, flag it and give people support. So an important thing to say here is we are not replacing human judgment, but we are directing human attention to where it matters. So basically supporting people. And I'm a strong believer that technology should be designed in that way, that it is there to support, not to replace. So for us, that's an important distinction. Now on the slide, we actually have a different application for Snapshot. And this is helping big infrastructure owners to monitor flood risk that is close to their assets. So we've used it in that sense as well. So we can pick up issues that lead to flooding and the actual water level. And that is meant for a lot of people in that infrastructure management side, that they can not just improve their resilience, but they can also target interventions when they need to do that. And this is also quite important to what we're later on we'll be talking to about HVM, is we can vary the image frequency depending on conditions. So for example, with this flood example here, if we have perfect weather, we're just taking an image every day. If we're looking at vegetation, we're looking at issues with the performance of that drain or culvert, for example. But when we have a bad weather event, we can up the frequency significantly so we can keep a more dynamic watching brief. Now, please, if you could go to the next slide, please. So to deliver this operationally, we obviously needed a camera, and we've developed a small but powerful package, which is fully solar powered, autonomous. It has day and night vision. You can see on the front, it's got two holes there. They're two different sensors with infrared. So we can deliver both day and night vision, separately and get the best of both worlds. It's really easy to use. And as you can see, it's handheld. It's very small. So it disappears in most stands or temporary infrastructure that we apply it to. And everything else happens in the background, basically. So the device itself is, very straightforward to use. So that brings me to the next slide, please. So that brings us basically to the partnership with CrowdGuard, and where we've worked for HVM. And when we first sat down, the question wasn't, can we put a camera next to HVM deployment? It was more, can we create something generally useful to support what is already there in terms of assurance, due diligence, and operational confidence? Because in HVM deployments, they present quite a serious challenge. You've got very professional teams, everything is carefully planned, based on legislation, you've got certified systems, risk assessment, and operational procedures. But as Cameron already said, once you're live, it is a dynamic environment, things can change, equipment could move, layouts could have to change, and operational drift can happen. So with that in mind, we are really looking at building up more confidence around that. So we wanted to build a practical layer. So on the slide that you currently see is a model that was specifically designed for, the HVM deployments. So what we're doing is we are taking images, we timestamp the image, we basically blur out people. So that's obviously big for the GDPR side and the privacy. And then we're picking up and classifying what we're seeing in terms of the HVM equipment, the spaces. So we can really make a proper assessment of what is going on that site. And then that can be used either dynamically by people to pick that up on the site, or later on we can do a report, a deep dive, and share it with stakeholders. So if we can go to the next slide again. So as I already said earlier, this is not about replacing people or replacing installation sign-off or supervision. It's purely about strengthening the assurance and giving a proportionate layer of evidence. And again, on this slide, you can see more clearly how we blur out, basically the whole person, not just the face, just to make sure that, that is done properly. And we also securely store the data and purge it in accordance with the GDPR and data handling policies. Then the next slide, please. So a really important part of any technology or solution is its practicality. So we spend a lot of time on making it really simple to deploy. As you've already seen, the device is quite small, but we've then had to work quite hard on making sure that it can be attached to existing street furniture. So for example, lampposts with the right permissions, we can do that, and we can attach it to that. We can also do it on literally, stands that we build independently. It's quite broad what we can do with it. So there's quite a few mounts, magnet mounts, permanent ones that make it quite simple for the device to be installed. Once it's installed, everything else is done in the back end. So once it's running, it could happily sit there for years with minimal maintenance, or we can actually move it dynamically. And we've done that with the team from CrowdGuard. We've done both. We've had it on jobs for longer periods of time, and we have it in small carry cases where it can literally be installed for a day if needed and taken down. So in that perspective, it's quite flexible and versatile. The actual way of working is we have our own platform. So where needed, we have secure APIs that mean that we can integrate with people's workflow systems. And that is quite an important part of it as well. So in summary about basically the Snapshot solution, what we've tried to do here is to say that visibility does not necessarily mean surveillance. And that's an important distinction, I think. And also that assurance doesn't have to mean complexity. Because sometimes the smarter solution is not more data, but it's the right data at the right time in the right place. And that's what we've tried to do, and deliver a generally valuable layer of assurance for HVM deployments in collaboration with the team at CrowdGuard. Thanks, Cameron. Back to you.
Yeah, well said, Roger. Well said. So now you know a little bit more about Snapshot Live. You need to know how it integrates into our HVM operations. So as I said before, the aim for Snapshot Live is to close the assurance gap. Once the deployment's live, the job isn't just simply finished. Snapshot Live helps provide an additional layer of assurance during the live period. The important phrase here is evidence-tracked quality assurance. It gives the organizer, venue, local authority, safety officer a clearer record of what was deployed, where it was deployed, and was it deployed in the correct configuration. This supports the professional sign-off, audit trails, post-event review. But it's also important to know what Snapshot Live is not. It is not a replacement for a competent person on site. It's not a substitute for proper installation checks or supervision or operational decision-making. It's also not a CCTV camera or surveillance. It's specifically designed to focus on the HVM layout and the assurance record, using time-stamped still imagery rather than continuous monitoring. From a practical point of view, it's designed to be simple to deploy It can operate using solar power and SIM connectivity, so it doesn't need fixed power, cabling, or any complex infrastructure. And this makes it particularly useful for temporary and event environments. So the value is not that it adds complexity. The value is that it adds confidence. It helps demonstrate that reasonable risk-led steps have been made to maintain oversight of the deployment after the handover. So in other words, it strengthens the protect element of our plan. So CrowdGuard also benefit from using Snapshot Live on our HVM deployments, on our temporary HVM deployments, because it confirms to us that the equipment remains in the agreed configuration throughout the whole operational period, supporting assurance that your venue continues to receive the intended level of protection. And for that reason, Snapshot Live is included at no additional charge. Where a client or venue does not wish to use Snapshot Live, they simply have to opt out. Moving on to the next slide, Izzy. So this slide shows how AI-assisted analysis can help flag for potential deviations. So in simple terms, the system can compare images against the agreed parameters through AI and highlight where something may need attention. For example, if an asset appears to have moved or the deployment does not appear as expected, the system can prompt a targeted check by a competent person. That helps the team focus attention where it's needed, rather than relying on only routine or manual checks across every location. So the AI is not replacing the installation team or the supervisor or the sign-off process. It's supporting them by helping to focus the attention where it's needed and where it's going to be most useful. So this is very much in line with a proportionate, practical approach. So next slide. So recently, we did a case study at Leeds United, where Snapshot Live was used alongside the temporary HVM deployment to support the quality assurance, the due diligence, and the operational assurance. The key point here is that Snapshot Live was not being used as a surveillance tool. It was being used as an assurance layer to support the competent people already involved in the deployment and the matchday operation. During the trial, the HStop were deployed as part of the agreed HVM arrangement, but Snapshot Live provided the time-stamped still imagery of the deployment at defined points in the matchday cycle. This gave them a very clear team visual record of what was in place, when it was in place, and how that aligned with the operational plan. One of the most useful outcomes of this trial was the way Snapshot Live clearly demonstrated notifications in a real-time operational scenario. So once the crowds were safely inside of the stadium and the relevant roads were reopened, the HStop units were moved out of the roads onto the side of the road as part of the agreed operational process. Snapshot Live then identified that there was a gap in the array and triggered an alert. This alert is important because it needs to be understood in the right way. It doesn't replace the human judgment or the operational control. It simply highlights that something's changed and prompts a check by a competent, trained person. In this case, the alert was entirely consistent with the planned movement of the operation. The value that Snapshot Live created with this image was a record showing that when the roads were closed and then reopened again, and how it aligned with the agreed matchday plan. Then we can also see that when the roads were closed again, the HStop units were placed back into the agreed configuration. Snapshot Live captured the time visual evidence that the equipment appeared to be correctly reinstalled. That included confirmation that the H-stop units were positioned in the agreed rated orientation at 90 degrees to the direction of attack, with the agreed spacing in between the units in line with the manufacturer guidance and the principles set out in the national guidance. So, in practical terms, this trial demonstrated three things. Number one, Snapshot helped evidence that the transition between the operational states, the road closed, the roads reopened, and the roads closed again. Number two, it supported the quality assurance process by flagging the changes to the array and prompting the targeted checks when appropriate. And number three, it created a clear time-stamped record that could support the post-match review, stakeholder assurance, and due diligence. The wider message is that this is exactly where Snapshot Live adds value. It does not replace the need for competent installers, trained teams, or agreed sign-off configurations. It strengthens those processes by giving the team an additional layer of evidence. This is a good example of CrowdGuard's plan, provide, protect approach in practice. Plan the requirement, provide the right HVM product, and protect through the operation through proportionate assurance quality checks. Moving on to the next slide. So when we talk about protective security, especially around HVM, the question's not usually, can we remove every possible risk? Because in the real world, that's not achievable. The better question is, have we taken the reasonable and proportionate steps to understand the risk, reduce the vulnerability, and prepare to respond if something did happen? And that's where Snapshot Live can support venues, clubs, local authorities, and event organisers. It helps create an auditable evidence trail. And in simple terms, it gives you a clearer record that the agreed HVM were in place, that the checks were carried out, and that any issues could be identified and followed up. This matters because in events, people may need to demonstrate that the decisions were made and why. They may need to show that the protective measures were not just planned, but actually delivered and monitored in a proportionate way. Once again, it does not replace the people, the plan, the risk assessment, the operational briefing, or the final sign-off. Those still 100% matter, but it can strengthen the evidence behind the process. So rather than relying on memory or paper notes or assumptions, you have a time-stamped visual record that supports quality assurance and due diligence. And this is particularly relevant as expectations around protective security continue to develop, including the context of upcoming legislation. The main message here is simple. Snapshot Live helps you evidence that you took the issue seriously, applied the proportionate controls, and maintained oversight during the deployment. Defensive decision-making is not about claiming perfection. It's about being able to show that reasonable, proportionate, and documented steps were taken. Just the next slide, please, Izzy. So plan, provide, protect. For clubs, venues, safety officers, the benefit sits in four main areas. First, the installation assurance. Snapshot Live can help confirm that HVM assets appear present and aligned to the agreed configuration at defined points in time. Second, the quality assurance. It supports internal checks and professional sign-off processes. Third, due diligence. It helps demonstrate that a considered evidence-based approach has been taken to reasonable measures. Sorry, technical difficulties. Fourth, transparency. It provides reassurance to stakeholders without creating unnecessary operational intrusion. This aligns with CrowdGuard's wider approach, practical.
Maybe we can leave Cam there.
Sorry about that. I'm having some technical difficulties. Sorry, I'll just finish off with fourth, transparency. It provides reassurance to stakeholders without creating unnecessary operational intrusion. This aligns with CrowdGuard's wider approach, practical, flexible solutions matched to operational needs. Nothing excessive or intrusive, just what is appropriate. And importantly, it aligns with national guidance that emphasises proportionate, defensible decision-making. So, proportionate measures you can justify. Assurance you can evidence. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say there's quite a few questions in the chat. If someone wants to address those.
Okay. Cool. Right. So question number 1 from Aidan. What is the image quality like in the different weather conditions? Roger or James, do you want to touch on that?
I can do. Hi, Cam, Roger, thank you very much for great presentations. Hi, everybody. I'm James Jarrett from Snapshot Live. We use a 5 megapixel full resolution camera, both in day and at night. We find having a fuller resolution lets us to see deeper and further into the image. Apart from in, let's say, a foggy condition where your visibility is very, very low, we don't seem to have any problems in different types of weather conditions. We have developed a special rain cover, which actually goes over the front of each lens on the camera to help with any blur that might happen through rain. So we keep the raindrops away from the lens. And also if the camera was lower down in some cases, any passing spray from vehicles. So we have developed accessories to help combat that, but we don't seem to have any problems right now for issues with bad weather conditions, as long as you can naturally see it yourself through normal visible means.
Perfect. Cheers, James. So a question from Antonio. What type of AI is used?
Number one for me, that's a good question.
We'll link it to Harry's question as well. And how does it differ from other AI agents?
That's a good question. So when we start off on a new project, we always start off with generative AI. This is the likes of AI, for instance, ChatGPT, Google Gemini, the sort of AI we become to, we all use quite regularly in our lives, and we interact with sometimes knowingly, sometimes not knowing of other IT systems. And that's what you find other AI agents are based on as well. Now, generative AI is very good on context. It's very, very good on reasoning. However, it's also quite low on repeatability. So if you run the same process through and you ask it the same question, you'll receive a number of different results. And even if you tailor your prompt for the AI, you still only might get the same result 95% of the time. To identify and segment both people and H-dot barriers, but also more importantly, determine the gap between the barriers, we needed a more bespoke model. So we've used a process called discriminative AI. And this is traditional computer vision trained on H-dot objects and people for segmentation. And we're using these bespoke, private, highly tuned AI models. We're not using for this application the generative AI. And we found that we are getting some fantastic results. We're getting some very high repeatability. And that goes both during the day and at night when an H-dot looks very, very different with a black and white reflective image. But it's we only use this very specific custom trained models for this kind of application, and allows us to actually operate and run calculations on the images so we can determine those all important gap widths, and that's what triggers the alerts back to the users when the gap is too great between the different H-dot values.
Cheers, James. So Lauren's asking, can you rent the camera or do you need to purchase it? So like I said, it comes free of charge. We see it as it's a joint benefit. So we know that our HDOP are, deployed as tested in the right configuration. And obviously that comes back to the clients as well. So from a certain point in time, it will be going on all of our deployments. And if you don't want it on your deployment, you simply just have to opt out and it won't be sent. Antonio Armstrong, can you change how frequent images are taken? Yes, so it depends on what type of events you're patrolling. So if it's a football match, you might want the camera to turn on 2 hours before kickoff and then maybe end an hour after full time. And you might set it to take a picture every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, every 1 hour. So you can set the timing intervals to, however many pictures you want it to take during that time. So for a football match, we take an image every 15 minutes. A question from Colin. So we're going to start rolling this out from the start of June, but it won't be on all of our deployments as of yet. We're going to slowly ease it into our client base. And yes, it can create a report with all of the pictures, with all of the readings that Snapshot Live has generated. Question from Will. What mobile network does Units use and how does it perform in areas with poor signal? I think that's one for you guys.
Yes, I'll take that one again. Great question, Will. So we have a real advantage with images compared to video. Although we take one high resolution picture, it doesn't really matter if that picture takes 30 seconds to stream up to the internet, or if it takes between 5 and 10 minutes. And our system is designed to operate in extremely poor signal areas, where even if we have a tiny amount of data, we can trickle feed that picture up to the internet so you get it every time. There are tricks we can play in terms of how we buffer the data, and we can even lower the resolution if we absolutely have to, but we haven't found we've needed to yet. So that's how we get the data up. We do have contracts which cover all the phone networks in the UK. We are a fully roaming system, so we will lock on to the best phone signal in the area. And you can also steer those as well. So if you choose, or if we know in an area there's, Vodafone is more prevalent or O2, we can steer the camera and the device to connect to that network and only fall back to automatic if it's unavailable.
Perfect. Another question. What would you say to a safety officer who is concerned this could become intrusive or overcomplicate their event or match day operation? Great question. I'd say Snapshot Live is designed to do the opposite. It's there to support the operation, not add another layer of complexity or intrusive monitoring. So it uses scheduled still images rather than continuous video. And the focus is on the HVM deployment itself, not on monitoring people. That's why they're blurred out. The purpose is to provide a simple time-stamped assurance record so that the safety teams, the venues, and CrowdGuard ourselves can evidence this and evidence that the agreed measures were in place at the key points inside of the event. It's not all intended to replace stewards or safety officers or, like I said, the competent operational checks. It simply provides an additional layer of assurance, and it helps identify whether a target if it's used properly and as intended, it should make the quality assurance process easier, more consistent, and much more defensible without disrupting the match day or event operation in any way, really. But great question. Another question from Antonio. Will CrowdGuard team review the images from Snapshot Live internally to improve their standards and improve their training? Sounds like it could be a really benefit for your team. 100%. So with Snapshot Live, if we start to see, a consistent, if the gaps are consistently aren't up to standard, it obviously means that there's training needed. And if the H-stops are moved for vehicle access and they're not put into the correct place again, it just means that more training is involved. But at least we now know at the stage the event is going on that a check is needed by a competent person, and that training is then needed after that.
You also understand, Cameron, you also get to understand not just the detail of when the H-stops were in place, but you can see when they were put out. So you actually get a timestamp of how long they're in place for. Are they in place at the permitted time, or are they too early? Are they then removed at the permitted time out of the permit, or are they in place correctly? And it can give you end-to-end quite a lot more useful data points as opposed to just there was an H-stop there in that right location. So across a period of time and across the entire event, it's very interesting to see what some of our customers say about how they like to use that operational information just to guide themselves on what's going on and to check back after. That's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, definitely. Very exciting to roll this out into as many events as we can. Are there any more questions before we wrap this up? Don't think so. Is there anything that you'd like to say, Roger or James?
I just want to say it's been really good, obviously, to work with CrowdGuard to get Snapshot suitable for this application. It's been really, really nice to do that and to learn quickly on the complexities of this application. And hopefully we can help to create public spaces, keep them safe and make them even safer. So thanks for the opportunity for the webinar.
I echo that. Thank you very much for joining today. We hope you'll come with us on our journey. And we've loved working with CrowdGuard. They have immense dedication to safety and quality and service. And I think introducing this for their customers really does show and highlight that.
Cheers, James.
So thank
you very much. And it's a pleasure working with you too as well. So thank you all for joining our webinar. And if you've got any more questions, just drop me an email and we'll see you later. Cheers.
Thanks everyone for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.